There are lies people tell with words. And then there are lies they tell by pretending to love you. The hardest part is figuring out which one you're living. I never imagined I'd question why my own husband married me. Until one conversation changed the way I looked at our entire relationship. My name is Claire. And this is how I discovered the truth. When I met Daniel, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I had spent years building my career. Long hours. Weekend shifts. Missed birthdays. Missed vacations. Eventually it paid off. By my early 30s I owned a successful marketing agency. I wasn't wealthy enough to stop working. But I was comfortable. Very comfortable. Daniel never seemed impressed by any of that. That's what attracted me to him. He worked as a project manager. Had a steady job. Lived in a modest apartment. On our first few dates we barely talked about money. We talked about books. Travel. Movies. Our childhoods. For the first time in years, I felt like someone actually saw me instead of my career. We dated for 2 years before getting married. Everything seemed normal. At least, that's what I believed. The first strange moment happened during our honeymoon. We were discussing future plans when Daniel casually asked, "So, how much do you actually have saved?" I laughed. "Enough." He smiled. "No, seriously." I gave him a vague answer. He seemed disappointed. I ignored it. Over the following months similar conversations kept happening. He asked about investments, retirement accounts, business profits, life insurance. Every question sounded reasonable by itself. Together, they painted a different picture. Whenever I asked about his finances, though, the conversation ended almost immediately. "I've got everything under control." That was always his answer. Then came the comments. "You don't realize how lucky you are. If I had your opportunities, I'd retire by 40. We're set for life because of you." Every sentence made me slightly uncomfortable. Not because he was wrong. Because it slowly stopped sounding like admiration. And started sounding like expectation. One evening I mentioned that I was considering selling my company in a few years. His eyes lit up instantly. He spent the next hour talking about beach houses, luxury travel, early retirement. Not once did he ask whether selling the business was something I actually wanted. It felt as though he'd already started spending money that didn't exist. For the first time, I felt nervous. I didn't tell anyone. Instead I started paying closer attention. Little details became impossible to ignore. Whenever the mail arrived, Daniel always checked it first. He suddenly became interested in helping organize our financial documents. He even asked whether my lawyer had updated my will after our wedding. I laughed awkwardly. He didn't. That's when I started asking questions of my own. Nothing dramatic. Just ordinary conversations. How much had he saved? Did he have investments? What were his long-term goals? His answers were always vague. Sometimes they even contradicted each other. Something wasn't adding up. One Saturday while Daniel was visiting his parents, I did something I'd never done before. I searched public records. Mostly because I wanted proof that I was overthinking. Instead, I found something unexpected. Daniel had been engaged once before. Then twice. Both engagements ended before the weddings. Curious, I contacted someone we both knew who had gone to college with him. I expected gossip. Instead I received silence. Then one sentence. "Claire. Just be careful." That warning echoed in my head for days. Eventually I reached out to one of Daniel's former fiancées. I wasn't sure she'd even reply. 3 days later she called. What she told me made my stomach drop. Daniel had constantly pressured her to combine finances. Encouraged her to buy property in both their names. Asked detailed questions about inheritances. When she refused, the relationship ended. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe not. I still didn't have proof. Then everything changed. One evening Daniel left his phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. I wasn't planning to touch it. Then a message appeared on the lock screen. "You're almost there. Once everything's merged, you're set." My heart started racing. I unlocked the phone using the passcode he'd shared months earlier. The conversation was with someone listed only as R. There were dozens of messages. Most discussed money, investments, joint assets. One message stopped me cold. She has no idea how much she's actually worth. Another read. Just be patient. You'll never have to worry about money again. I couldn't breathe. I took screenshots. Sent them to myself. Then quietly put the phone back. That night I barely slept. The next morning I asked Daniel one simple question. If everything I own disappeared tomorrow, would you still want this marriage? He laughed. What kind of question is that? I'd still have you. His answer sounded perfect. Until I looked into his eyes. There was no warmth. Only calculation. That afternoon I met with my lawyer. Within days my business assets were legally separated. Bank access changed. Financial permissions were removed. I didn't tell Daniel. A week later I confronted him. I printed every screenshot. Every message. Every timeline. At first he denied everything. Then claimed the messages were taken out of context. Then blamed his friend. Finally, he admitted he'd always believed marrying someone financially successful would make life easier. He insisted he had eventually grown to love me. Maybe he had. Maybe he hadn't. At that point, it didn't matter. Love built on hidden motives isn't love you can trust. We divorced less than a year later. The hardest part wasn't losing my husband. It was realizing I'd ignored my own instincts because I wanted the relationship to be real. Looking back now, the warning signs weren't invisible. I simply kept explaining them away. Today I'm in a much healthier relationship. My current partner has no idea what my investment accounts contain. He doesn't care. The first time we discussed the future, he asked where I wanted to live. Not how much I was worth. That single difference told me everything. Money can build houses. It can buy vacations. It can make life easier. But it can't create genuine love. And anyone who treats your bank account as your most attractive quality is showing you exactly what they're really in love with. If you've ever ignored red flags because you wanted to believe the best in someone, share your story in the comments below. Sometimes trusting your instincts isn't being paranoid. It's protecting your future.